All right, let's talk about another Indiana Jones comic from Dark Horse Comics here. And it's called Indiana Jones Thunder in the Orient. And it's by Dan Barry. Thunder in the Orient takes place a year before Fate of Atlantis. But I will say this, you wouldn't know that by reading it. I found this looking at an Indiana Jones timeline that's mostly complete of Indiana Jones work. But this is an Indy selfie story, like I said in the last review. In this, Indy and Sophie discover the original Buddhist texts, like from the mouth of Buddha, basically, and they're on the quest to find where the rest of them are, but at the same time the Japanese are also after these Buddhist texts because they can control all of the Buddhists in Asia this way. And here's something that I like about Thunder in the Orient. It's wild. One thing, we got the Japanese, which you don't see the Japanese a whole lot in these Indiana Jones stories, which I think is a shame. The Nazis are very overused. So if you throw Nazis in your story, it better be really good. Because we have 2 movies with straight up Nazis in them. 3 if we're counting Dial of Destiny. And that's just too safe, in my opinion. There were 2 other nations in the Axis powers. You know, using the Japanese. The only other story I can think of that does this is Indiana Jones and the Army of the Dead by Steve Perry. The Japanese military's in that too. And I like having just this crazy 6-issue adventure. And it's 6 issues. It's really long. It takes up the majority of this omnibus, which I have it collected in the Indiana Jones Omnibus Volume 1 by Dark Horse. All these Dark Horse Indiana Jones omnibuses are pretty hard to find now, but I got an okay deal on this one. It's a little beaten up, but well worth your time to check out. Mainly, honestly, for Thunder in the Orient. This is the best story, in my opinion, in here. It's the longest. And they're going all over Asia looking for these Buddhist texts. They even find, like, Shangri-La at one point, which is wild. There's another great character named Kamal. He's a little kid, basically kind of like Short Round, but he's really good with knives, and he's there to protect Indy, and he just throws knives at people. It's wonderful. I love it. This story is just wild. There's a lady whose name's Serpent, and she's like a warlord, like a Mongolian warlord that hates the Chinese government because they took away her land. And so she has like a band of like renegades that ride around China, just doing their thing, and they're in this. There's a lot of people in this story. The art, personally, I think is the best we've seen so far. It's very, to me, classic looking comic book art. I like the coloring in this more than I did in Fate of Atlantis. And I don't know if it's just the way these are printed or not in these omnibuses. Because I noticed reading, because I've read, like, say, the Aliens Dark Horse omnibuses compared to the new Marvel omnibuses they did for the Alien series. I feel like Marvel does a better printing job, but you would want it to be better because it's over, those omnibuses are over $100 a pop. These retailed at $25. So, you know, they're an inexpensive way, or at least at the time they were an inexpensive way to get comics that were very, very much out of print. Like all these Indiana Jones comics, you couldn't find them anywhere. These were made during Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was coming out. So they did 2 volumes of this Indiana Jones Dark Horse stuff, and then they did 3 called The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones, which are the Marvel comics. So there's 5 total omnibuses. I plan to go through all of them for y'all. But anyway, what do I rank Thunder in the Orient. Honestly, I have to give it a good 4.5 out of 5. To me, this is a real gold standard comic. My one issue with it is that it is more to do with continuity between this and Fate of Atlantis. Reading it, I thought, like I said at the beginning of this review, I thought it was happening after Fate of Atlantis, because we have Sophie in it, and in Fate of Atlantis, the comic, they say, oh, I haven't seen Sophie in 10 years since we did that thing. I think they were in Iceland. They worked on a dig in Iceland, and they ended up spending the winter together. But no, I guess he had an adventure with her in Asia a year prior to Fate of Atlantis. I don't know. I liked Sophie a lot more in this than I did in Fate of Atlantis. There's not really that whole, oh, I'm a psychic sort of thing. They do make some jokes about it, but she's never like super it doesn't do a psychic thing like she did in Fate of Atlantis. And this is her last comic book appearance. She's only in Fate of Atlantis and Thunder in the Orient, comic-wise, because they never did a comic for Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, which I think is a real shame, because that story, I think, deserved a comic book adaptation, if not a novelization. So, we never got that. But I appreciate what we do have. Join me next time as we review the last series in this omnibus with Indiana Jones in the Arms of Gold. I'll see you then.